Welcome to the overnight of From Day One. As always, we'll grab our mailbag, but here is part two of the Crop Circle Talk, A Midnight in the Desert with Charles Maxwell and Art Bell, originally from September 14th, 2015.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I didn't know that. I can tell you, for instance, that Avery Stone Circle actually has an avenue or two of again, standing stones, and it almost describes a womb if you see it from the air. So that's interesting. But what it seems like, what was happening here is if you look at Levengood's work on the blown nodes, just to go back there for a sec,
Sure.
He did a lot of experiments, and he noticed that the next year, in real circles, the crops that grew there were stronger and had a greater yield of protein and were just overall healthier, by about 20 to 30% from the controls. So again, the question is why? What's going on here? And it seems like microwave radiation, by the way, kills plants, but plasma energy seems to have the opposite effect. If we have negatively charged ions in the atmosphere, it seems to really help what Levengood called embryogenesis, the germination of the seeds, the very mystical kind of the process of life itself seemed to be boosted by these plasma fields. So we then get to this idea that the ancients were aware of these magnetic anomalies. They built their temples over them. Mm-hmm. They went there to worship, but also they would take their seeds, place them there overnight. They'd become electrically charged, and they'd get the same effects. So what Berg said is, look, this is a fertility science that we've forgotten, that's being described pretty accurately here. And these crop circles are actually drawing our attention back to these sites where we find these magnetic anomalies. And this is the case not just in England, but I found this was the case also at Serpent Mound in Ohio, where we had a crop circle come down in 2006. And so you find this not just in Wiltshire, but elsewhere as well.
So you think it's fertility related?
Yes, I do. I think it has to do with germinating the seeds. If you have a technology that guarantees you a greater yield and a successful harvest, you have an immediate advantage over your neighbors. And especially back in the day when you couldn't guarantee a crop necessarily, an advantage like this was hard to ignore.
So you think this fertility thing just applies to crops?
It applies to the crop, yes. But you could, theoretically, you could, these energy fields can be beneficial for you too.
Well, then it's been woefully overdone. We've 6.5 billion people on the planet.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why it's so interesting. You see, if we can find something that gives us an edge where perhaps we can grow crops for easier, we can guarantee. We can make some dent in the growing food.
We're going to need it.
Problem. Mm-hmm. As you know, we're running into food and water shortages of epic proportions. So it goes but beyond being a mere curiosity about UFOs, and it becomes something that you really must look at.
All right. Let's get right down to it. How did you claim you broke the crop circle code?
Yes.
So what is the code? How did you break it?
I actually don't make that claim, Art. I claim that I found something. We definitely were able to articulate some circles and pull out some blueprints that we did. Then we did our best to bring those into the real world through a very long 2-year R&D process, working with aerospace engineers. But in terms of the code actually being properly broken, I think the man you should talk to is Nassim Haramein, because he has a greater kind of understanding of the holistic code. Crop circles confirm this code, but he finds it in many other places as well, like the Bible, and in the geometry of various cells and processes. So he's a fantastically...
yes, I understand you ran your work by him, and with a couple of modifications, he showed you how this ship could be, or drive, could be made to work.
Yeah, his is not a ship. It's an energy drive, and yes. So I actually flew out to Kauai, where he's based, because at that stage our project was ramping down we hit some major roadblocks, and we were running out of money. And I'd come to the conclusion that we were the only people to try this in the world. We had to try, but it looks like it's going to.
All right. Well, I want to know what you did. First of all, when did it come to you that what you had designed could be a drive or part of a ship? That it was essentially a schematic on how to build this drive. I mean, how did that come to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. In talking with Nicola, who had originally decoded the first circle, I said to him, first of all, what are we looking at? And we discussed things like the klystron, the fact that it seemed to have boundary conditions for some electromagnetic fields. So then we thought that means there might be magnets involved, that we might have to generate our own electrical field.
Well, when you have klystrons, you have magnets, right?
Right. Well, this was new to me. I mean, I'm not a scientist by trade. Nicola's an electrical engineer, so I was playing catch up the whole time. But what I discovered is that, in fact, there are certain things that you need, and this is where Nassim agreed with us. He said, you guys were right about the rotation. You were right about trying to manipulate plasma. And you were right in general about the physics that you're playing with. But he said, you guys were trying to spin metal, which is true. We were trying to spin something called a secondary disk, which is the skirt of our kind of UFO design.
All right, well, if you don't mind, how far did you actually get? Can you describe, or do you have photographs of...
it's in the film, actually. It's very clearly described how far we got. We got to testing the plasma ignition system. That would have been the heart of the device. And we were doing it we were trying to get a steady kind of stream of plasma there so we could bend it with the magnets. This is the idea. And it's kind of based on the theory that we have that the universe doesn't run on gasoline. So what does it run on? What's it doing? And can we copy that? And that was what Sweet Potato, that's the name that we gave the machine, by the way. That's what Sweet Potato was trying to do. We were trying to imitate the universe, or the galaxy, at whichever level you want to understand. Where's all this energy coming from, this EM?
Can you give me a sense of the actual hardware that you did put together?
Yeah. So what we did was we used, I think, between 12 and 24 neodymium magnets that we had to get actually cut to order.
Right.
We worked with a company in Simi Valley called Rytec. They were aerospace engineers, and they helped us with the chassis, which we made out of aluminum 606.
Okay.
That's actually, to people at home, that's the stuff that commercial airliners are built out of.
Right.
So we were worried about the stresses and the tensions that it was going to undergo, spinning it so many revolutions a minute, that we thought we better get the best material.
So these magnets were spinning?
Yeah, well, actually, the magnets were going to be stationary. They were going to spin the disc.
Okay.
So it would be like an Oreo cookie, and the cream would be spinning. And the cookie itself would be the disc.
Yeah, that's starting to sound like a saucer.
Yes, if you look at the design art, it's very saucer-like. And again, I said, well, this is just spooky. This looks like we're building a UFO. And what Nicola described to me is, if you look at the electromagnetic field we were trying to generate around the machine, in the same way that a sailboat is designed uniquely to travel by wind, we were trying to harness EM kind of waves and use them. And I'm not sure how effective we would have been, but that was the idea, was to really try and create this self-contained standing wave function, and then see if that would affect the plasma in the center of that reaction.
How many crop circles actually went into what was the final design?
Yeah. Initially it was 8 to 10. But we had to narrow that down to 3 because our criteria were so strict.
Okay.
So for instance, Nicola said, look, I really think that this is a boundary condition in this crop set. And I said, well, you can't it has to be all there. So let's take what we know is real. Let's make sure the nodes are all blown in these designs, because I'm not interested in hoax circles.
Right.
And then let's see how they fit together. And to be honest, that was a problem, because they didn't come with labels or this spark plugs there. It was very much, like I said, there were certain elements you see a klystron and you think, wow, maybe there's microwave energy being modulated here. But then how exactly we pull that off, it had never been done before, you see. So every step of the way, we had to come up with our own solution. And I'll give you a simple example. How do you mount this thing with all these magnets and spinning pieces? What's your mounting technique? I mean, we ended up with just sticking stuff together with glue, which I thought was, was guaranteed to fail under stress. So we had some problems. I'm not going to say it went...
yeah, glue is probably not top of the line for interstellar possible drives.
I think, no, it's extremely dangerous. But while we're doing this...
Charles, you're going to have to hold on. When we come back, we'll try and get a better mental picture, if not a picture, of what you put together. I want to picture it in my head, and I don't quite yet.
In that darkest time between dusk and dawn, from the high desert, it's Art Bell's Midnight in the Desert. Now, here's Art.
Charles Maxwell is my guest. He attempted to build a drive from crop circles. And I'm trying to get a sense in my mind, mechanically, of what this was like. Obviously, he built a disc, and interior to that disc were the magnets.
Yes, sir. So the way it works.
I'm sorry. How many again, please?
There were about. This is a long time ago. Actually, we're talking a few years. There were, I believe, there were 12
okay.
large magnets, neodymium magnets. They're incredibly strong. By the way, that's the same kind of magnets used in your MRIs.
Okay.
And then in the center, we had what was essentially a spark plug. We were trying to create a little plasma flame. And then we hoped that that rotating EM field would be strong enough with these neodymiums to do something weird to that plasma, to warp it.
When you say a spark plug, do you mean literally a spark plug?
Yeah, well, actually, it wasn't. It was doing similar things to a spark plug. It was called an aquapulsar, and it hadn't come to market yet. We got the inventor to. He was a very nice guy, and we're going to lend us a prototype. And this would create a plasma flame for us to mess around with. But ultimately, if I'm being honest, we had a lot of trouble maintaining that flame.
Right.
But the real trouble was getting the magnets to rotate the secondary disc when we couldn't actually figure out a mounting technique. So in the film, you'll see us testing the ignition system, and we're bench testing it. It's not actually it hasn't been fully integrated into the design yet because we wanted to bench test it first.
It seems to me, Charles, everybody who tries to design these drives actually does take a very similar route to yours or some variation thereof, generally with rotating magnetics and something like a Jacob's ladder or what have you in the center, and sometimes modulated or kicked off with lasers. So I've heard this from many different guests. So anyway, I guess, and so this specific design came from, I believe you said three
crop circles. So there were two in England, and there was one actually by Serpent Mound in Ohio. That when we articulated them, they didn't require any additional tinkering. You're just staring at a blueprint. And so one of them, for instance, would describe boundary conditions for the field. Another one, like I said, would have kind of the klystron, and the majority of the machine would be described there. But I'm not going to lie here, there was stuff that we really looked at and we said, well, what on earth is that? And it was up to Nicola, to try and figure that out. Now, traditionally, let's say NASA's building a new vehicle. One guy or a few guys have an idea. Then you hand it off to 400 other engineers and scientists, and then they will outsource. But instead, we put this all in Nicola's lap, so it was between Nicola and I. and my producer, Dax Phelan, to try and figure out how do we do what at least we have never done before, and we don't think anyone else has. And right as it was all falling to pieces, I discovered that this man, Nassim Haramein, was doing essentially the exact same thing.
Okay, so you went to Nassim with the plans you had, and when he saw them, he said what?
Well, we flew to Kauai. He's a really lovely fella. He was incredibly busy, but he met with us over lunch, and he said, look, he said, you guys are really, you shouldn't beat yourself up, because I was in I was a bit depressed, in that state. I thought we had failed, but I was encouraged that someone else was coming at it from a relatively similar angle. Although I have to say, Nassim's code is not our code. His is much more elegant, much more cohesive, and has multiple sources, whereas we were just working from crop circles. What Nassim found in crop circles was confirmation of what he already knew. It was this one particular shape, that he was seeing from, that I believe was related to kind of Buckminster Fuller type geometries.
Sure.
And he was seeing this shape from a variety of different angles. So it was like the circle makers were articulating it in every possible variation for him.
Well, if Nassim said these things, I'm impressed, because I interviewed him not long ago. He's a very, very bright guy.
Yeah, he's a lot brighter than I am. Now, what he said was, because I asked him, I said, where did we go wrong? Were we even onto something? Did I waste my time? That's the question. It's a bit of a loaded question, but I was in a particular funk. And he said, look, guys, so you really were right about some fundamental things. You were right about the rotation. You were right about the plasma. You were right to try. And then he told us he said, look, Edison found 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb before he found the right way. And then he referred us to the Wright brothers, which I think is overstated. We're nowhere near the Wright. But the point being, when the Wright brothers actually performed their first flight, there was math art that came out in major publications and in newspapers saying, this is a hoax. This is ridiculous. And here's the math to prove that human flight is totally impossible. And we include those articles in the film. So you can see, he made a lovely point, and he really encouraged us. But what it comes down to is, why is he going to succeed, or why is he going to get closer than we are? And it comes down to this, because I did ask him, I said, what did we do wrong? He said, you can't spin metal that fast. He said, your math was way off. And again, this is math that had never been done really before. He said, but your metal would have liquefied once you got over a certain number of RPMs, and you still wouldn't have got close to the kind of energy you need for a kind of a singularity, for that plasma to kind of fold in on itself and collapse.
Right.
In an implosion. And he said, so I said, well, how do you do it then? He said, you can't spin the metal. You have to spin the field. And the light bulb went on in my head, because it's a genius way of approaching it. So instead of spinning metal and getting doused in liquid aluminum, right, while you're performing this experiment, he actually has created amplifiers that he's patented that will spin the electric field instead.
Yes.
It's a much more elegant solution, and I think he's going to get some kind of effect art from it. If not, and he demonstrates for me. I'm not really allowed to talk about exactly what he did, but he showed us some very simple devices that he had made, according to the design, the geometries of the vacuum, as he calls it. And these things are literally drawing 4 volts, and I don't know from where. And I've seen this with my own eyes. They're not hooked up to any kind of power source. So it's exciting stuff working with that guy. Not working, but getting to pick his brain for an afternoon and having him say, look, you guys, you got close, but you really should be spinning things that aren't matter. So that was a revelation.
Well, I'm telling you, there are many, many people right now, Charles, working on various forms of drives, whether they be an electromagnetic drive or whether they be some other form. It's really an intense area of work right now, because if man ever wants to really go to space, beyond possibly going to the moon, if we want to go anywhere real, and we want to get there in a reasonable amount of time and not devote generations of travelers to it, it's going to be the only way.
Thank you for making a really important point. Art. Combustion technology won't get us very far.
No.
So that's kind of what we were up to. And again, people might say, well, you're dabbling in the new age, but for me, it's very old age. These geometries, they're about the way that the universe works, the way it was created. How is it doing what it's doing? Can we copy it? No one's going to sue us, hopefully, because it's the creation. But can we replace combustion technology with implosion tech? And for people at home, what's the difference? It is the fact that when you blow stuff up, you do get enormous energy, but it's quite inefficient in the long run. And the idea that we can implode things and actually get more energy out of the equation is tantalizing. I wanted to explore it.
Well, okay, so this is ended. Where do you go now?
Yeah. Well, what we, like I said, we ran out of money.
Yeah, I get that.
We had to shut down. And so for me now, I stay in touch with Nicola. We're still friends. And Nicola is moving forward with this work, but it's going to take funding.
What do you think you spent so far? Or
I can tell you what I spent on the R&D project.
Yeah.
We spent about $150,000.
Good Lord.
Dollars. Yeah, it's a lot of money.
It is when it's coming out of your pocket.
That's coming out of my pocket. I really put my money where my mouth was.
Well, I'll give you props for that. Not many people would find a new way to look at 3 crop circles and pony up 150 grand to try and prove their point. So you must. I would really love to see the final rendering, or is that proprietary?
No, absolutely not. In fact, it's in the film. It's even in the trailer. We didn't try to hide this stuff. If you can take a look at that at some point, and to the folks at home, you'll see not only the machine and every part of it, you'll also see the full articulation of the main crop circle that started it all. So we're pretty open about all of this, and we welcome the criticism. We just really wanted to push the envelope, and it became almost an activist against the way things are done.
Okay, so I'm headed to my own website right now. I'm going to click on your picture. Hopefully that's going to take me somewhere. No, it hasn't taken me anywhere yet. Okay, well, all right, so I see a crop circle.
Yeah. So I believe what you're looking at is 2009, the Sanctuary. And it's called the Sanctuary because it came down next to a very old little stone monument that's in a field known as the Sanctuary. So that one had blown nodes. Very interesting. Very
interesting indeed. However, what would I have to do now to see the rendering, the final rendering that came from?
What do you mean for your own? If you wanted to do it at home, you would just need simple Autodesk software and.
No, I'm sure you've got it up somewhere, right? You mentioned.
Yes, it's at I'm so sorry. It's at our website. The trailer is anyway, afieldfullofsecrets.com. And there's a trailer there, some bio.
All right, I'm going to play the trailer right now as we speak. And I really do want to see this. I can't imagine what a decision to. How far do I have to wait, by the way, through this before I get to it?
I would say it's about a 2.5 minute trailer. It'll be the last minute.
The last minute, okay.
If you're scrubbing, yeah.
Yeah. All right. This is quite remarkable, and there is a very rendered high definition aerial photograph that I'm seeing of that crop circle. And here we go. Oh, a very good job. What a good job of rendering. And now you show the craft.
Yeah, we take it to bits and put it back together for you.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Folks, this is worth watching. Go to artbell.com and then jump over to his website. This is pretty impressive stuff. Honestly, it is. So take my word for it. Having just watched it, it's worth the watch. So
thank you, sir.
I imagine putting that together alone would have been a pretty big job.
Yeah, that's why we had to outsource. You see, we were deadly serious, so we bought something known as a rapid prototyper. This is a 3D printer. And it had a 5-axis lathe on it, and we thought, let's keep things in-house and lower the costs, and let's see if we can't build this entirely in-house. And we were wrong because of the diameter of the secondary disc. It was too great for our lathes to cope with, and as a result, then we had to outsource. And I think, as you know, once you start going to aerospace engineers, your costs skyrocket.
Yes, of course. All right, Joe. Hold tight a moment. Hold tight. Trust me on this, folks. Do this. Go to artbell.com. You'll see my guest picture. Click on that. And then on down, you'll see his website. For heaven's sakes, click on that and watch this short trailer video, and you'll see exactly how this happened and the machine that was created from it. So it's totally worth it. artbell.com. Click on guest picture, then the link. This is Midnight.
It's not radio, but it is what's next, exclusively on the Dark Matter Digital Network, Midnight in the Desert, with Art Bell. Now, here's Art.
Here I am. All right, listen, I'm about to open the phone lines, so here's the way that goes. Our public number is 1-952-225-5278 for Charles Maxwell. Area code 952-225-5278. Or if you want to come in on Skype, we can accommodate you. North America would be MITD 51. Just go to the little add button, add us as MITD 51, and thereafter we'll be on your list and you can punch it and call us. Now, same deal for international calls, except it's MITD 55. MITD 55. Following this show tonight, RCH is going to have another man working on a drive as well. I mean, we're getting all kinds of feedback from all kinds of people on a drive that'll get us the hell off this planet. I mean, in a way that really will allow us to navigate space. And I mean space beyond our moon, space beyond Mars, space. Really out there. So I'm thinking this is really, really, really important stuff. We had another gentleman on, you'll recall, not many nights ago, also working on a drive. And that one bent space, not so much time, but space. And one of these is going to work. I can't tell you which one. I can't tell you when. I can't tell you if it's going to be the product of 3 crop circles in design. I can't tell you if one of these physicists is going to stumble into it, and that's it. We're going to go from people trapped basically on the planet and or nearby it to a people that can actually travel to the stars. And if you can think of something more important than that, especially with the current condition of the planet, I'm all ears. All right, Charles, welcome back.
Thanks, sir.
So away went a lot of your money.
Yeah.
And I guess you were somewhat depressed.
Yeah.
And Nassim Haramein Brought your spirits up a little bit. So is there anywhere else to go? I mean, if you really do have plans from elsewhere for a drive that will get us from here to wherever, this is really still extremely, extremely important stuff. What do you do with it?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because you then have the problem of trying to bring it to market, and there's all kinds of problems there, not the least of which is the massive oil industry, which I don't think is in a huge hurry to give up trillions of dollars of revenue a year for something that potentially only needs maintenance. You see, the idea was not just that our machine or any of these drives, because there's many ways to skin a cat, that not just that this machine would be potentially a vehicle, but it could also be an energy generator, and with very few moving parts, therefore your biggest cost is fixing it when it breaks, but it doesn't require a whole lot of fuel.
Yeah, well, I guess what I'm saying here is get rid of that. If what you're saying is holds any water, and you put $150,000 into it, so I'm thinking you think it really holds water. You know, the design has got to go somewhere else. It's got to be examined by others. It can't be dropped here. You can't just say, damn, $150,000 gone. There has to be more.
I agree, and I think that's what the film is about, is to is so that we have hit a dead end here. We've gone as far as we could take it, but we do want other people to look at what we've done, to look at other things as well and say, oh, clearly they were wrong. They just needed to do this. We're looking for that. We want to inspire people to pick up the mantle and run with it, and really succeed where we failed. We feel like we're one of these light bulbs, but one of them is going to go. And in fact, you mentioned these drives that are out there. There's some really interesting work that's, again, so simple yet genius, related to the universe and what it's actually doing, which is the work of David Lapointe. And again, what we're just looking at is two interacting electromagnetic, or rather one field that's male and female, electromagnetic field in a toroidal kind of shape. And this is really exciting because it does confirm kind of what we were onto and what Nassim is trying to do. And it's very elegant and it's simple to understand. You don't need to know how to dismantle a quadratic equation or to even understand relativity to understand that the universe is electric.
All right, let's take a few calls and see what comes. Benson, I believe it is, on Skype. Hello. No, Benson is not there. I said you're on the air. He wasn't. Let's go to Winter Haven, Florida, I believe. Hello.
Hey, Art, this is Tom from Florida.
I'm sorry, Tom Sawyer?
No, this is Tom from Florida, sorry.
Tom from Florida.
Yeah.
Tom
Sawyer. Anyway, I think the government already is aware of the technology of this. I think that's why they're keeping all of it secret. It would be stupid for them to reveal it to us, in their opinion, because it would take all these oil companies and all that their funds away. But I do have a question for you, Charles, if I may ask. I heard a long time ago that these crop circles, somebody discovered that they actually formed musical notes.
Oh, that's very good, Tom. Okay, I think you're referring to the work of Paul Vigay, the late researcher. And Paul was a mathematician, and what he discovered, and this was also reflected by I'm going to get this wrong. I think it's the London Psychic Research Society, but they noticed that, yes, in fact, some of these crop circles, mathematically at least, seem to suggest certain notes. And then Vigay actually went and made a tune out of various circles. It's hard to say where that would lead because he did die rather suddenly. The official report is he committed suicide.
Really?
In England.
Really?
By the way, his family disputes that, Tom. So, but that's, you're absolutely right. It seems to be sometimes that we have to look at the geometry and say, what is it representative of? So that's one instance. I wish I could answer your question completely, but that's the reason that we couldn't afford to lose Paul, really.
I always found that very fascinating because I think music would be definitely one universal way to communicate.
Well, music is sort of math, right?
Yeah, it's about periods, and so you can have, and in fact, there is. I've mentioned this man before, John Martineau, wrote a book called The Little Book of Coincidences, Tom, that you might find very interesting, about the things like the fact that Venus is described in the sky as an almost complete pentagon every 8 years, and you get these really lovely, stunningly beautiful geometries when you describe the relationship of the orbits of Mars to Earth and Mercury to Mars. And he's done all these in this book by Wooden Press, A Little Book of Coincidences. So you can see those periods and those orbitals, and they're amazing. They're so, again, it looks like just really impressive, cohesive geometry.
Well, thank you, Charles, and thank you, Art. I hope your daughter's feeling a lot better.
She is, actually. Thank you very much. And so far, cross fingers, I have not caught it. Somebody asks, why always in wheat fields? And that's a pretty interesting question. In other words, why not on grass? Why not in the snow? Why not? I think the answer to that would be, I hate to answer it myself, but if you do it in a wheat field, it's a lot more durable, isn't it? In other words, if you do it in ice or something and it rains, it's gone. If you want it to be seen, if you are from elsewhere and you want us to notice this, then how could you do better than a wheat field? What do you think, Charles?
I have to be honest, they have come down in ice. We get ice circles.
I know it has happened, but it's usually wheat fields, right?
It is usually wheat. And not to bore the audience, but the reason I think, again, goes back to the fertility science. If you look at a stalk of wheat on its own, it's almost like a freestanding capacitor. And in fact, the way that the head of wheat is designed, it's like an antenna. I think that this has a lot to do with this telluric tide at sunrise.
In May. All right, we've got a break here, so we will be back. Be glad to take your calls. It's fascinating stuff. Eventually, one of these is going to turn out to be a real drive. Who knows? Maybe it's this one.
Want to take a ride? From the high desert and the great American Southwest, this is Midnight in the Desert, exclusively on the Dark Matter Digital Network. To call the show, dial 1-952. Call Art. That's 1-952-225-5278.
Or by Skype, that would be MITD51, or outside North America, MITD55. Listen, I would not send you on a goose chase. This is, well, worth your seeing. What you need to do is go to artbell.com, my page. You'll see a picture of Charles Maxwell, my guest. At that point, click on it, and then find the link to his page. When you get to his page, do watch this trailer. It includes the crop circle, and then the 3D rendering of the crop circle, and then even a picture of the craft that was created. I mean, it's quite remarkable and well worth seeing. Guy went out and spent $150,000 of his own money. My goodness. Incredible stuff. Absolutely incredible. Okay, Charles, welcome back. Is there anything, before we go back to the phones, important in your story that I have missed?
Goodness me, I think that as long as, we get across the point that we are coming from observational science here, that we're not just, we're not channeling the Pleiadians or anything. We really are.
I know.
You know what I mean? We're trying to work with observational data, and our model is the electrical universe. So we contend that there's actually a lot of electricity out there and a lot of plasma. And this is David Talbot's wonderful work that kind of turned me on to this. But this idea that a curvature space-time, the Einsteinian relativistic model, it's got all kinds of problems. And when you really look at who's making the advances, who makes the major inventions, the Marconis, the Teslas, the Edisons, these are electrical engineers working in the real world with electricity.
Oh, yes.
They're not theoretical physicists.
For the record, I don't interview people who channel at all.
No, didn't think you did, sir.
No, I don't. Kelsey on Skype. Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
You're on the air?
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Fine.
Good.
This is actually Cody at this.
Well, Kelsey's what's written.
Yeah, that's the Skype that I'm using there.
Okay, get good and close to your mic or you're going to cut out on us.
Okay, can you hear me better?
You're not.
I was curious to know Charles was familiar with the work of Lawrence Krauss.
Lawrence Krauss. Now remind me, is this the physicist?
Yeah, he's a theoretical physicist.
Yeah, not entirely. I mean, I saw his film. He did a film with Dawkins, did he not?
I think so, I'm not sure.
Okay, caller, are you on your speakerphone?
Oh,
Pardon me?
don't think so.
Well, you're cutting out like crazy.
Okay, I'll try. I'm walking around. I'll try to stay in one spot. I was curious to know, because my theory of circles is that I think that they're being created through.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. You're going to have to come up with a better way to do this because I cannot make out what you're saying. That's life, I guess. All right, let's go to the phones and whoever comes up next. You're on the air. Hi.
Yeah, hi, Art. Hi, Charles. It's Scott in San Diego.
Hi, Scott.
And I've got a question for Charles about crop circles. And something he said earlier made me think of this. I wonder if crop circles are meant to help us in these times of global climate change and with the recent incursion of genetically modified foods. He said something about reports of protein increases in the affected grains in the circles. So given that, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great point, mate. And let me direct you to the real science again. And there's a peer-reviewed article by the late W.C. Levengood in a journal called Physiologia Plantarum, which is a Dutch publication, and this is issue 92. And the article is called "Anatomical Anomalies in Crop Formation Plants." And it goes into these protein discoveries, the yields. But it's very simple. All that Mr. Levengood did was that he took controls from outside the circle and he grew them. He germinated the seeds, and then he went to what's called the shadow of a former circle, where we knew there'd been a really interesting crop circle the year before. And he did that again with that. And this was done statistically, so they did it with tens of thousands of plant samples. This was not random, it was very scientific. And that's what they found. They found that they're stronger, healthier. They have 20 to 30% more protein. And you can see this in the side-by-side comparisons that Levengood provided, which are in our film as well, actually. So you can literally see that the crop circle affected plants, they're just taller and healthier and more vital. So that's what we found.
Okay.
That's pretty amazing. I'll check that out. Thanks.
It is amazing. Thank you very much. Going to Skype for Wayne.
Hi there.
Hi.
Earlier on, your guest made a reference to the Chilbolton radio telescope crop circle, and I was, I've always been really fascinated by that one, particularly the response where they show it looks like a bizarre radio antenna, kind of like a fractal antenna.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
So do I.
Is that a real crop circle, or is that?
Okay, I'm going to be brutally honest with you now. First of all, I didn't mention Chilbolton earlier, but I should have, so thank you. The antenna array, I have no idea, and the reason I don't is because I'm only willing to comment on circles I was in physically, that I studied, or that I got or that we got, fantastically reliable data about blown nodes. And if that's the case, there has to be a lot of photographic evidence. I like to talk to people who've been in this circle. This is just kind of doing primary context research. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Going to Chibolton, the antenna, I really don't know. I can tell you that the disc, the ASCII disc in the face, as much as people have fallen in love with that thing, is fake. It came down over 3 days. And I know this because Andres Muller went down there to Chibolton and talked to a farm manager, and he said, clear as day, it was a 3-day formation. So the ASCII disc that everyone goes nuts about, with the alien, the typical gray holding that disc, is undoubtedly fake.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for carrying the call. We appreciate it. And let's go here to the phone. You're next, whoever you are.
Yeah, hi, this is Ronald calling from Malibu, California.
Hey there.
Hi, thanks for taking my call, Charles. I have just two quick questions.
Wait a minute. Ronald.
Yeah.
You're the Ronald who was packing up with his wife to go running away.
Yeah, in fact, we finished packing up today.
When do you leave?
We are actually leaving Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Because, Wednesday. We're going Wednesday, and then we're going to stay until the 28th.
All right. Sorry. Go ahead for the guest.
Okay. My first question is, have you thought about putting up like a closed circuit TV surveillance cameras near the crop circle site so that you can actually capture footage of the crop circles being made, which I think would lend a lot of credit. It would lend a lot of credibility to it, I think, and attract some real scientists. And then my second question is, and I've used this to crowdfund web series before, have you thought about doing like Indiegogo or Kickstarter or GoFundMe to gather not only funds to continue with your project, but also gather possibly some real technicians who can come in there and make your saucer and drive work for you?
Okay, those are both good questions. Let's go to the camera one first.
Right, the camera ones are great. Thank you for mentioning that. There's a very good reason why we didn't set up hidden cameras. One, it's expensive, and we couldn't budget for that. Two, and this goes to the kind of political side of crop circles, there are hoaxes everywhere. Mm-hmm. If they even suspect that you have a camera in a field, the first thing they're going to do is the first thing they're going to do is try and trick you. The second thing they're going to do is steal your camera. So that has been considered. In fact, my director of photography said, why haven't we done that? He was very cavalier about catching hoaxes and really went the extra mile. It's just not financially feasible for us 5-6 years ago. It might be now, I think. You could put GoPros, camouflage them and hide them all around us.
That's what I was going to say. Get a drone. Yeah. Why not get a drone? Wait until something's in the middle of a formation, fly that sucker up, and take a look-see with night vision.
Yeah, night vision's a great way to do it. I think that you've just hit on the way to really get to the bottom of this. There's another way. I mentioned earlier weather satellites, and Art corrected me about the Klystron array, but weather satellites in Britain scan every field in the nation every 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. This is our food source, so of course we want it protected. So I've always said, why can't we simply see the weather data? Because we could, 15 minutes is not enough to make a large circle. We would definitely catch them in the act if we could have access to those weather satellites.
All right. His next question concerned continued funding for your project.
Yes.
Crowdfunding, GoFundMe, something.
Yeah, that's, again, a very good idea. What I've decided, and I didn't arrive at this easily, is that we have some significant flaws in our design. So that if I were to continue funding, I would hit the same problems. And those problems we've discussed a little bit, stuff like mounting, the fact that I could never get that disk to rotate anywhere close to the speed it needed to bend that plasma with an EM field. So what I would prefer to do, mate, is to find a more viable version like Nassim's and invest there. And I think that we need to be smart and discerning about which technologies we endorse. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And in your case, you don't want to use GoFundMe. You want to use Please Pay Me Back.
Please pay me back, yes, because I'm still in the red. Yes.
All right. On the phone, you're on the air with Charles Maxwell. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, this is Donnie from Delmar, Maryland, Roswell's TUR.
Thank you.
Hi, Don.
I have a couple of questions. Can I pick you up on shortwave radio?
Yes.
What channels?
5085. 5.085.
Okay.
Okay.
And my second question is, we sent a message into space with our DNA coding, and like right below it was the shape of a human.
Yes.
And then I guess I'm not sure years later if we received the message back, and it had like different DNA coding and an alien right below it in a crop circle.
Well, are you in the crop circle? Okay. What about that?
Well, you're referring to, let me see, that's the data strip response is what you're referring to, where actually the little gray fellow was supposed to be silicon-based.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really interesting. Unfortunately, because it was that's a Chibolton formation as well, or that part of the world. So I'm afraid to say I don't have a lot of data on that one. It did come down, I think, about 10 years ago. And so rather than put my foot in it, I don't have enough kind of empirical data about what the lay of that crop circle was. But off the top of my head, based on the ASCII disk, I have serious questions as to the legitimacy of that circle, I'm afraid.
All right. You're on the air with Charles Maxwell. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, this is Art Bell. My gosh, I can't believe it.
Try to believe it.
Huh?
Yes, try to believe it. You're on the air, so go ahead.
I do. My favorite guest of yours from 2000 or so was a guy named Michael Schumann, Dr. Michael Schumann, man from Skeptics magazine.
Yes.
And I'm not a total skeptic, but I kind of look at all things in a roundabout way. Now, crop circles, I've heard many people speak of them. Most every one of them have approached them from the idea of debunking them. And then they mostly find out they can debunk about 93% of them, and they accept the other 7% as being real. And I would kind of think, from my skepticism, that maybe there's 7% of people who can fool that person. But in this guy, this guy's name is Charles, is it?
That's correct, yep.
Yes.
Hi. In your case, I would say there is a good possibility that observing crop circles triggered something in your mind that answered some questions in your mind, and then you came to these worthwhile conclusions and built something which may be the right thing, may not. But I've seen elephants in the clouds, so to speak. You know, your imagination can be stimulated, and it can confirm.
So, are you suggesting that he just, his imagination went wild with what he saw?
No, not that his imagination went wild. His imagination put together, and maybe it is. Maybe those crop circles are from aliens. I keep an open mind about it. It's just that most of the people who look into them say that same thing. I can debunk 93% of them, and the other 3% are real. Or maybe the other 3% are just by some very clever Englishmen who have too much time on their hand and need a punch of bass.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah. Well, you struck on a very good point, my friend, and I'm not going to just let it go. I think what you're saying to some extent is, and I've noticed this, I'm not going to dispute it, is that crop circles can be something like a Rorschach test. So there is the possibility that you bring your own kind of decoding, as it were, that what you see what you want to see. And you could certainly levy that argument against me and say, well, he was looking for technology and he found it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very legit question. I don't really know how to answer, except that we tried very hard by using scientific method to kind of divorce ourselves from that possibility.
Well, to spend $150,000 of your own money, you must have thought pretty hard about it before you took the bite of the apple.
Absolutely, of course, yeah. And the other thing, is that we have to decide, and this is another point that your question raised, is who's actually making them? Who is actually behind the real ones? Are we assuming that it's aliens? Because I think that's a false assumption. We just have to assume they're real because, and this is the distinction, there's ones that are boarded, where it's the weight of a human being has crushed and killed those plants. They're never coming back up again. They're not going to be 30% stronger the next year. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And yet we have these real ones. So we have to decide first, is this, like Art says, is this a military satellite? Is it aliens? Is it the planet itself? There's some real mind scratches, benders that you have to come to terms with. And it's clearly, it could be us. We could be doing this to ourselves. It could be a joke. It could be some kind of projection technology that doesn't require boards, but doesn't require aliens either.
Well, you must have thought about all this before spending all that money. Now, you've got a video. Is that for sale? You're selling the video or just available?
The film, you mean?
Yes.
Field Full of Secrets.
Yes, yes.
Actually, it's available on Netflix right now. It's also on iTunes, Amazon Instant, Hulu, Vudu, on various of those pay systems. I think that's the easiest way to find it if you do want to give it a try and see what we got up to.
All right. Well, I hope they do. I think that we pretty well wound through your story, Charles, so I'm going to thank you, tell you that it was a wonderful night. I wish you all the luck in the world. One of these is going to work out, buddy. One of these days, somebody's going to come up with it, and if they don't, we're stuck on this planet. So,
thank you very much, Art. It's been a pleasure.
Charles Maxwell, thank you. So what we will do is take a break. And when we come back, we'll do open lines. Absolute open lines. I'm not even going to suggest a topic. I'm going to take 1 hour of solid open lines on the phone or from Skype. Either way.
And that's where we will leave it tonight. So open lines tomorrow night here from Midnight in the Desert. As always, please like, share, and subscribe. Get us to those goals of 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers. So box you over an extra cents of those nice red boxes. And of course, Google, YouTube will actually give us some attention. CoinBase and Ibotta are below. You know the drill. $10 free when you sign up for them. And then, of course, CoinBase Earn 2-minute lessons, 1-question quiz to get up to $100 in free cryptocurrency. And, of course, Ibotta rewards you for what you normally do anyway, and that's shopping. So until we do meet again tomorrow, like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another. And it's always a great new world to release the Krakens. Rock and roll and have fun as we go into the final section of the anniversary here from day one. Have a great night and enjoy your great night's rest, everybody. See you tomorrow.